doing today? Great. Go ahead and just take a seat. Make yourself comfortable. You can sit on the chair or the couch, whatever feels best for you. So, would you like anything to drink? Coffee, tea, water? We also have some juice. Okay, alright. Well, if you need anything throughout our session, please ask. So, I understand that this is your first time in today. Great. So you can just go ahead and confirm your name. And then your day of birth. Thank you. And your appointment is at 3 o'clock. Alright. And then, based on today's session, we'll see how many times that I think you need to meet with me a week. Standard is 2 times a week, but some people need more, some people need less. So we'll just kind of see how today's session goes, and then we will decide. Okay. But before we get started, any major concerns? I know you mentioned, anxiety in our kind of, follow-up questionnaire. Okay. Alright, great. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions today, and then we'll go through some strategies for your anxiety and see if you're doing any of these, and then you'll pick one that you want to use. So don't mind me taking questions. I do have a questionnaire in here to kind of help me understand a little bit more about you, okay? So we're just gonna think about your anxiety and, just tell me a little bit about that. Okay. So, do you find that, you spend large periods of your day worrying with that? And, how many hours a day do you think that you're worrying? That sounds like, a lot. Definitely wouldn't make you feel, good inside thinking about that. So, do you often feel nervous, apprehensive, or on edge? Okay. Yeah. So do you feel like, things are getting on top of you? So, just kind of piling on and on and on, and you feel like you can't keep up? Okay. Yeah. So, do you feel like it's kind of hard to relax and you can't really switch off, that tension that you're feeling? Okay. I understand. That must be, that's not a fun way to be living. Always feeling stressed and you can't turn the switch off. So do you ever experience, any butterflies in your stomach, muscular tension, dizziness, or breathlessness? Some kind of tension, okay. Stomach. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of work on helping you recognize the symptoms of anxiety, okay? And, understanding what anxiety is and what causes it and what keeps it going, what's feeding it, okay? And then we're going to find ways to help manage it, overcome it, and, help you relax from your anxiety. Okay. So I do have a bit of a questionnaire today, and just please be honest with me. Try to, tell me as much as you can. I am not here to judge you. I am here to help you and understand that, things that you feel are normal, and it's okay to feel that way sometimes. We just want to kind of lessen that, help you learn ways to manage it. Okay? Alright. So, just let me know, yes or no, do you feel on edge? So, when you think about, your anxiety or symptoms of anxiety, do you ever feel on edge? Okay. What about nervous? Okay. Panicky? Stressed? Okay. Irritable? Maybe low patience? Okay. And maybe uptight? Okay. So feelings. Okay, so now we're going to think about your physical symptoms. I know you mentioned that you feel kind of tense sometimes. Does that ever lead to muscular pain? Okay. Do you ever feel dizzy or faint? Do you ever have chest tight or painful? You said you have stomach? Yeah, okay. Do you ever feel like you're trembling or have, tingling sensations? Okay. Does your heart race? Do you ever feel like you're breathing faster or slower? And concentration difficulties? Okay. So some of them, not all of them, which is common. So we need to think about, when you're feeling anxious, what do you think in your mind? So do you ever kind of worry, what if, something bad happens? You're coming up with all these scenarios in your head. Okay. Does your mind ever jump from worry to worry? You're worrying about something else, and then you worry about something else. Okay. So you often imagine kind of the worst case scenario. Yeah, okay. That's pretty common. You are always on the lookout for danger. Okay. Alright. So I want you to think about your behavior patterns now. So do you avoid things that you would like to do because you feel, anxious, nervous? Mm-hmm. Do you ever pace around, find it hard to relax? Do you ever snap at people too easily? Okay. Get easily flustered? Do you ever talk very quickly? Okay. So yeah, you are, you do have a lot of, the symptoms of anxiety. However, I don't need to be alarmed. Okay. It's very common, and there are many things that you can do to help improve the situation. Okay. So we're going to talk about some strategies today. So when you think about anxiety, what do you think it is? So maybe uptight, irritable, nervous, tense, wound up. Okay. So when you're anxious, you're going to experience a variety of uncomfortable feelings. And you might have an increased heart rate. Your muscles might be tense, which you mentioned. You might be sweating. You might tremble. You might have feelings of breathlessness too. So as well as this, anxiety affects us mentally too. So when you're anxious, you worry for large periods of time. It's normal to have a worry here and there, but if it's excessive and you're worrying too much, you want to be careful with that. So sometimes your worry can feel out of control. So these worries are often about a variety of issues, and commonly our mind jumps quickly from one worry to another. So it also is going to influence how you behave. So when you feel anxious, you often avoid doing the things that you want to do. okay? Because you're worried how it's going to turn out. So when short experiences of anxiety are part of daily life, it becomes challenging when anxiety begins to follow people around, and it's kind of a regular feature, which it sounds like maybe with you could be. So I'm just curious, but what do you think causes your anxiety? And this is a very broad question, so take some time to think about it, and don't feel rushed. There's probably many different contributions to your anxiety. So work pressures, okay? Relationship problems. Those are all things, that are the problems that are there, and they can heighten your anxiety for sure. So we have life events. Anything else? So you switched jobs recently, okay. How do you feel about that? Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, great. Alright. So I want to think about your thinking styles. So sometimes you may not even realize it, but the way you think can, lend itself to experiencing anxiety. Okay? So, for example, if someone's anxious, they tend to expect the worst possible scenario is going to happen. And, they're constantly on guard that something bad might happen. So, you might think that because all the things that could go wrong, you might have to have a difficult time turning the switch off. So, another interesting, way to think about this is there are evolutionary reasons why you experience anxiety. So, it is an unpleasant experience, but it also has positive benefits. If you're feeling under threat or in danger, that anxiety is going to help protect you. So your heart's going to beat quickly, your muscles are going to contract, you're going to sweat, your breathing changes. So when you're looking at anxiety in that way, you can see how it can be useful in certain situations, but you don't need that for every situation in life. So most of the time, it is a combination of all of those things, okay? And do you feel like that is the case for you? Yeah. I feel like it's for your lifestyle, but you also feel like your kind of thoughts have been like this forever. Okay. That makes sense. So we definitely want to work on helping you learn some strategies to help you calm down, okay? And just, being able to recognize I'm feeling anxious and what can I do, okay? So again, you said you think you have the thinking style that leads to it. So, for example, some people are, more likely to overestimate the likelihood of bad things happening than others. So it is easy to see how regularly presuming the worst in this way could make someone feel very anxious if you're always seeing the bad things. Unfortunately, when we do feel anxious, you don't think as clearly, Okay, so it's kind of a vicious cycle. It's going to keep happening because your mind is not clear and you just keep thinking those thoughts. Okay, so anxious people also, believe that worrying has a protective function. You're looking out for danger, like I said earlier. So, I have a little activity for us to do now. But, do you have any questions so far? Okay, well, thank you for being honest. So, we're going to go through a situation together, okay? So, I want you to think of a situation where you really felt anxious. Okay, so starting a new job, okay? And what were your feelings? Stressed, uptight, nervous, okay? Those are all valid feelings. So, what were your physical symptoms? How'd you feel? Stomach churns, okay. Muscle tightness. Chest tightness, okay. Right. And what do you think your behaviors were because of this? Maybe not, interacting, kind of avoiding things. Okay. And coworkers. Okay. So what do you think your thoughts were during that time? I'm not good at this job. He's new, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay. So, do you see how it can kind of become a little bit of a cycle? Okay. All of these things work together, your feelings, your thoughts, your physical symptoms. Okay. So you can see how it kind of all comes together. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about how can you reduce your anxiety. So what do you think you could do to reduce your anxiety? Recognize it, okay. Yeah, so I think the first step is just, understanding what is anxiety, okay? When do you get anxious, okay? And then another thing that is very, very hard is learning how to challenge your unhelpful thoughts and see things in a more realistic light. So those thoughts have been, you said even since you were a child, you've been a worrier. So those thoughts have been there for a very long time, okay? So learning how to, challenge those thoughts and be thinking that this is not rational, okay? It could happen, but for you to worry about it nonstop is not helpful, okay? And then improving problem solving skills, which we'll talk a little bit more. And then learn to reduce the amount of time that you spend worrying, okay? And we're going to talk about how to do that. And I think that you will find it very, very helpful, okay? Learn how you can feel more relaxed physically and mentally. And then learning how to stop avoiding the things that make you anxious, okay? So we're going to go through a little activity together, okay? So the first thing is just understanding your anxiety. So when you think about your anxiety, what do you think it is? So just in your own words, what do you think it is? So it's unpleasant, yeah. Okay. Tell me more. Okay, so you think of kind of the physical symptoms, and what would that be? So heart racing, okay, what else? be sweating. Okay. So I want to think about, what could you do when you have those physical symptoms? If your, chest is tight, what could you do to kind of help loosen that up? Breathe, yeah, so deep breaths, and I know it seems cliche, but that is a way to kind of help loosen up that chest. It's just breathing deeply, okay? And maybe your muscles feel tight, so maybe doing some stretches, getting deeper breaths to supply oxygen to your muscles, okay? So some of these responses will help. You also want to kind of think about the thoughts that are causing those, okay? So you mentioned that you do have a lot of, unhelpful thoughts, okay? So I want to think about, what's an unhelpful thought that you have? Okay, so at work, you said they won't like me. Okay. So many times when you're thinking that, you think that you are not able to handle the situation, okay? But you are. You're thinking, oh, no one's going to like me, I'm too anxious, what if I lose my job because no one likes me? Okay, so the thoughts kind of get a little irrational, okay? So if you're thinking like that, it's going to keep making you anxious, right? So you might find it difficult to, identify an unhelpful thought, but I want you to try thinking about a time when you were very, very anxious, okay? So I'm gonna kind of bring to your attention, some patterns of unhelpful thinking today, okay? So, for example, predicting the future. So when we feel anxious, it's common for us to spend a lot of time thinking about the future and predicting what could go wrong. This is something I do very often, rather than just letting things be, okay? So in the end, most of our predictions don't happen, and you've wasted time and energy worried about being upset. So you are doing this when you're predicting how, your time at your new job is going, okay? Another thing is mind reading. So you're making assumptions about others' beliefs without having real evidence to support them. So maybe people think I'm weird, something like that, okay? Another thing is people commonly, kind of blow things out of proportion. Okay, so maybe you assume that something has happened is far worse than it really is. Or they think that something terrible is going to happen when there's very little evidence, okay? And then focusing on the negatives. So anxious people often have a tendency to focus on negatives, which is going to keep your anxiety going. If you're always thinking, negative things are happening. So I'm just bringing your attention because I want you to be aware of what can kind of cause anxiety. Another, pattern of this is should statements. So I should never be anxious, or I should be, at the top of my job right now. So you imagine how you think things should be. It's not helpful. It's just adding extra pressure to yourself, okay? Overgeneralizing is another pattern. So based on one isolated accident or incident, you assume that all others will follow a similar pattern in the future. What if statements, what if I don't make new friends? Okay, things like that. Labeling, so if you're adding negative labels to yourself, I'm always anxious, I'm weak, I'm a waste, things like that. So you don't want to be doing that stuff. So what you're going to do is, I want you to think of an unhelpful thought that maybe you've had in the past. Okay, so my friends think I'm, whatever word it is, okay. So what would you call that? Yeah, that's mind reading. Okay, you don't really know that your friends think that, they're your friends. It's kind of actually like an overblown statement too. They're your friends, so they're not going to think, those things about you. And it's also labeling as well. So you're labeling yourself, which you don't want to do. Okay. Any other, unhelpful thoughts? So you're thinking about a trip and I'm going to miss my flight, I'm not going to make it. Okay, so I would say that's probably blowing out, right? Blowing out of proportion. And it's a what if, so you don't want to be doing the what ifs, right? So, just learning techniques and, identifying what you're doing and knowing that that's not something that you want to keep doing is a great thing to be doing right now, okay? So I just want you to be more aware. So there are ways that you can kind of challenge your unhelpful thoughts. So thinking about, is there any evidence, that contradicts your thought? So maybe, you've always made friends at work, or you've never missed your flight, things like that. Can you identify the patterns of unhelpful thinking described? You were labeling yourself, okay? So things like that. Think about, what would you say if a friend was saying the things that you're saying, okay? How are you going to feel 6 months in time about this? Is there another way of looking at the situation? Alright, so I have a little bit of homework for you, because I know it's hard to really kind of think about the things that you think and situations. So you're going to do a thought diary for me. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to write down your situation. How does it make you feel? Unhelpful thought you had. Any challenges, so you're going to challenge those thoughts. And then think of a more balanced thought, okay? So, I'm going to give an example of this. So maybe the situation is, you think you're going to miss your flight, okay? Emotion, how does that make you feel? Anxious, okay. Uneasy. So unhelpful thought, I'm not going to make it. It's kind of a what if, right? So is there any evidence that contradicts this? You never missed it before. Can you identify any patterns of unhelpful thoughts? It's a what if, okay? What would you say if a friend who had a similar thought? I go out earlier, you'll be fine, things like that, okay? And then more of a balanced thought. So I could miss my flight, but, I never have in the past, okay? So it's more balanced. It is a possibility, but it's more balanced, okay? So, I've got a couple of activities today. We're going to talk about problem solving, okay? And how you can problem solve for this. Okay. Alright, so if you've got lots of problems, you're going to find it more difficult to cope, okay? So this is going to have a clear impact on your anxiety levels. So struggling with unresolved problems, can make you feel worse, right? So you can end up worrying or, thinking about the problems over and over again. And it's going to help, interfering with your sleep, your lifestyle, your mind. So you want to make sure that you're not, feeling those things. So we want to begin to overcome the problems. So what I am, and this is going to seem a little, cheesy, but the first thing I want you to do is identify your problem, okay? So maybe it's, I owe $400 to my friend, okay? So that's your problem. So then you're going to come up with possible solutions. So try to list every solution, okay? So you can overcome it. Don't worry about how unrealistic an idea seems, okay? So how might you have solved problems like that in the past? What your friends and family might do? How would you see yourself tackling that problem? Okay, then you're going to choose a solution. So coming up with as many solutions as you can, and then you're going to choose, and then you're going to break down your solution. Okay, so to help carry out your solution, it might be useful to break it down into smaller steps. Okay, so maybe you owe $400, so maybe you want to look for another job. Choose jobs to apply for. Create a resume, send a resume, buy interview clothes. Prepare answers to interview questions. So you're breaking it down and really thinking about how are you going to solve, the problem that you owe $400. Okay? And then you're going to try your solution out. If it doesn't work, try something else. Okay? So it's not, a way to just end everything. And then your homework for this week is to limit the time you spend worrying. Okay, it sounds a lot easier than it is. Okay, so people who are anxious tend to spend a lot of their time worrying. It's hard to relax and switch that off, okay, which you mentioned earlier. So what I want you to do is decide a time in the day that you will have your worry time. So maybe it's after work in the morning. So after dinner, so like 7 to 8 at night. Okay. At other times, simply note down any worries. So if you're feeling worried about something, just write it down. Save it for later. Okay? Once your worry time arrives, choose how long you will be allowed to worry yourself. No longer than 15 to 20 minutes though. Okay? Begin timing yourself. So how long? So you want to do it maybe 7:30 or 15 minutes? Okay, write that down. During your worry time, I want you to try to resolve worries proactively. Okay? Try to come up with solutions to your worries, if possible. Using a pen and pad to jot down solutions can be helpful. So, as soon as your worry time is over, you're going to stop. Okay? So that is your homework. If you find it difficult to switch off, your worries during the day, don't fret. It's going to improve with time and practice, okay? So it's not just going to happen naturally, okay? So often things that, you've worried about at one point may seem less problematic when you go throughout your day. And you'll notice that too, okay? Alright, so that is all that I have for you today. Your homework is to do your worry time, and you're going to be jotting down, your feelings, okay, in situations when you feel like you're being anxious, okay? Do you have any questions for me? Okay. And I think right now we can start with one time a week. So if you want to chat with the receptionist in the front, and you can go ahead and schedule an appointment that works for you. But I will see you next week, and I'm excited to hear about your worry time. Right.